A police canine dog's split-second decision saves a child's life. When a ruthless kidnapper corners a terrified young boy in an abandoned warehouse, the stakes couldn't be higher. Officers hesitate, knowing one wrong move could spell disaster. But a trained canine named Rex doesn't wait. With a sharp command from his handler, he launches into action, defying all odds to protect the innocent. But as the dust settles, one question remains. Did Rex make it out alive? The automatic doors slid open, and Logan Pierce stepped inside the grocery store. His heart drummed behind the black fabric of his mask, hands buried deep in his jacket pockets where the cold steel of the gun pressed against his palm. The store was quiet for a weekday afternoon, just a handful of shoppers moving between the aisles, pushing carts, comparing prices, lost in their own routines. Fluorescent lights buzzed above, casting a dull glow over rows of produce, shelves lined with cereal boxes, and checkout counters manned by tired employees. Logan's eyes swept the store, calculating. A cashier at the nearest register, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, was scanning a customer's items. A security camera blinked in the corner. A young mother stood near the baby food aisle, adjusting the strap of the carrier holding her infant. He tightened his grip on the gun. No turning back now. He moved toward the counter, pulling the gun from his pocket in one quick motion. The woman at the register gasped, her hands flying to her chest. "Empty the drawer," he ordered, keeping his voice low but firm. "Now." She fumbled with the register, hands shaking as she tried to punch in the code. The customer in front of her, an older man with a loaf of bread and a can of soup in his hands, raised them slowly, his face pale. A nervous energy rippled through the store as people realized what was happening. A few stepped backward, unsure whether to run or stay still. The cashier finally got the drawer open, and Logan reached forward, stuffing bills into his pocket. It wasn't enough. It never was. He motioned for more, but the alarm suddenly blared to life, a piercing, relentless sound that shattered the air. Someone must have hit the silent alarm. "Damn it," Logan muttered, his pulse hammering. Red and blue lights flashed outside as sirens screamed closer. He had minutes, maybe seconds. He turned, his mind racing for a way out, when his gaze locked onto the mother he had noticed earlier. She stood frozen, holding her baby close, eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, he grabbed her arm. "You, come with me," she gasped, clutching her child tighter. "Please don't move." He yanked her toward the back of the store, his gun pointed at the other customers, warning them to stay put. The baby let out a small, startled cry as his mother stumbled forward. Logan's grip was firm, but not cruel. He just needed a way to keep the cops at bay. This was a mess, a stupid, reckless mess, but he wasn't going to prison today. He dragged her into the stockroom and shoved a metal shelf against the door, locking them inside. The baby whimpered, and the mother rocked him gently, her breath coming fast. Outside, voices shouted orders through megaphones. Officers moved into position, surrounding the store. Logan paced the room, his mind a storm of calculations. He had no plan, no backup, just a gun, a hostage, and a sinking feeling that things were spiraling out of control. The baby squirmed in his mother's arms, letting out a sharp wail. Logan flinched. The sound sent a fresh wave of nerves crawling up his spine. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm. "Tell them to back off," he said, nodding toward the phone on the wall. "Now." The mother hesitated, but she wasn't in a position to argue. With shaking fingers, she reached for the receiver as the police outside tightened their hold, waiting to see what Logan's next move would be. The police perimeter had tightened around the store, red and blue lights bouncing off the glass windows. Officers took cover behind squad cars, their radios crackling with updates. A crowd had started to gather at a distance, drawn in by the commotion. The tension in the air was thick, a storm waiting to break. A black SUV pulled up, its tires grinding against the pavement. The back door swung open, and Officer Jordan Blake stepped out, his gaze fixed on the grocery store. At his side, Thor, a muscular German shepherd with deep brown eyes, stood alert. The dog's ears pricked forward, sensing the urgency before Jordan even gave a command. Captain Reynolds approached, briefing Jordan in quick, clipped tones. "Suspect's name is Logan Pierce. Armed, unstable. He's got a woman and an infant in there. So far, no injuries. but he's getting more erratic. Jordan nodded, his focus shifting to the building. Has he made any demands? Not yet. Negotiators are trying to talk him down. Reynolds exhaled sharply. He's not listening. Jordan crouched beside Thor, giving the dog a firm pat. Let's see what you can pick up, buddy. With a hand signal, he led Thor toward the store's side, where a narrow alley ran along the building. The blinds on a small window were uneven, tilted just enough to give Thor a sliver of a view inside. The dog's body tensed. His nose twitched, sniffing the air through the gap. Then, a sharp whine cut through the noise of the scene. Jordan stiffened. Thor was trained to detect distress. If he was reacting like this, something was wrong. Inside, Logan's grip on the gun tightened. His movements had become more frantic, his patience running thin. Tell them to clear out, he barked at Hannah, his breath uneven. I swear if they try anything. The baby let out a startled cry, and Hannah rocked him desperately, whispering words of comfort. Logan raked a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. His eyes darted toward the barricaded door, as if expecting it to burst open at any second. He wasn't thinking straight. His thoughts spun in messy circles, crashing into dead ends. Outside, Jordan spoke into his radio. Thor's picking up serious distress. The woman and child are in danger. His voice was calm, but the weight behind it was clear. We don't have time to wait this out. Reynolds' reply was immediate. We need a plan. Now. Jordan's mind raced. A direct assault could put Hannah and the baby at risk. They needed to make Logan feel like escape was still an option, to trick him into a mistake. He glanced down at Thor, who was still locked onto the window, muscles coiled, ready. The dog could be the key to ending this before it took a deadly turn. Jordan adjusted his grip on Thor's harness. We're going in. He kept his stance low as he signaled the SWAT team. Shadows shifted behind the squad cars, officers preparing for the breach. The street was a battlefield of flashing lights, tense voices, and quiet urgency. Every second felt stretched thin, the weight of it pressing down on the entire scene. Inside the grocery store, Logan's grip on the gun was tight, his breathing sharp and uneven. The air felt heavy, thick with the stench of sweat and panic. He pulled Hannah and Mason toward the front of the store, his fingers clamped around her arm. The baby whimpered, sensing the fear radiating from his mother. You stay right here, Logan ordered, positioning them directly in front of the automatic doors. The glass reflected his face, wild eyes, a jaw clenched so hard it hurt. His body was thrumming with adrenaline, his pulse hammering in his ears. Outside, the negotiator's voice crackled over the speaker. Logan, listen to me. You don't have to do this. Let's talk this through. Talk. Logan let out a sharp breath. I don't have time to talk. I want a car now. No tricks, no games. You give me that, and they walk free. His voice rang through the store, bouncing off the tile floors and metal shelves. Hannah clutched Mason, her arms wrapped tightly around him. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay still. The gun was close enough to see every scratch on its surface. One wrong move and a scuff of movement outside the side window. Thor had flattened himself against the wall, his head turned slightly, ears locked forward. He could see through the broken glass, his sharp eyes trained on Logan. The tension in the dog's body was wound so tight he barely breathed. He was waiting for the signal. Jordan's voice came low through his radio. Thor's ready. We need Logan distracted. Captain Reynolds gave the order. Move in from the back. The SWAT team crept toward the rear entrance. Boots barely touched the ground as they moved in formation. Hands gripped weapons, fingers poised. But the moment one of them reached for the handle, Logan's head snapped toward the sound. Don't even think about it. He yanked Hannah closer, pressing the barrel of the gun against her shoulder. I'll do it, I swear. Outside, Jordan's jaw set. He glanced at Thor, then at the shattered window. He had seconds to make this work. Go. Thor moved like a bullet, muscles propelling him forward. He burst through the broken window, the sound of shattering glass masking his approach. Logan barely had time to react before the full force of the German Shepherd slammed into his arm. The gun fired, a deafening explosion that rang through the store. Hannah ducked, shielding Mason as the gun clattered to the floor. Logan stumbled, trying to shake Thor off, but the dog's grip was unyielding. Teeth locked around Logan's forearm, dragging him down. His screams filled the air as he fought against the dog's strength. The front doors burst open. SWAT officers stormed in, rifles raised, voices shouting commands. "Hand where we can see them. Now!" Logan struggled, but the fight was already over. Thor released his grip the moment Jordan gave the signal, stepping back, chest rising and falling with exertion. Logan hit the ground hard, his limbs splaying as officers pinned him down, cuffing his wrists behind his back. Hannah gasped for air, Mason wailing in her arms. The pressure in her chest finally loosened, and she crumpled to the floor, her body still wrapped protectively around her son. Jordan knelt beside her, his voice steady but soft. "You're safe now." Thor sat beside him, tongue lolling, his deep eyes watching as Logan was dragged away. The chaos faded, leaving only the aftermath. A mother holding her child, the storm finally breaking. The chaos settled. The sirens outside wailed into the night, but inside the store, a heavy silence filled the space. Hannah rocked Mason gently, pressing her lips to his forehead. Relief coursed through her, but her body still trembled from the fear that had gripped her moments ago. She turned to Jordan, eyes shining with unspoken gratitude. Jordan gave a short nod. "You're okay now." Logan's face twisted with fury as the officers hauled him toward the squad car, his arms pinned behind his back. His feet dragged against the pavement, but his struggles were useless against their firm grip. "You don't understand," he shouted, his voice raw with desperation. "This wasn't supposed to happen." The officers ignored his ranting, securing him into the back seat. The car door slammed shut, muffling his shouts as flashing lights reflected off the windshield. Outside, the world kept moving, indifferent to his downfall. A few feet away, Hannah stood wrapped in a police-issued blanket, her body still trembling. The store's automatic doors whooshed open behind her, releasing the lingering scent of spilled coffee and sweat into the cool evening air. Mason stirred against her chest, letting out a soft whine before settling again. She pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead, the warmth of his tiny body grounding her in the present. Something brushed against her leg. She looked down to see Thor standing beside her, his deep brown eyes steady, his body relaxed but alert. His fur was speckled with bits of glass from the shattered window, but he stood tall, unwavering. His presence alone made the tightness in her chest loosen just a little. A lump rose in her throat. She reached out, her fingers tangling in the thick fur at the top of his head. "You saved my baby," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her hand trembled as she stroked him, feeling the solid warmth beneath her touch. "I don't know how to thank you." Thor's tail gave a slow, steady wag, as if he understood. Jordan approached, his boots crunching against the scattered debris. He crouched beside his partner, running a hand down Thor's side. Pride flickered across his face, but his voice remained even. "You did good, buddy." The scene around them buzzed with activity. Officers moved in and out of the store, securing evidence, speaking in hushed tones. A few feet away, Captain Reynolds was deep in conversation with a negotiator, their expressions grim but relieved. Then, the news vans arrived. Reporters spilled onto the sidewalk, microphones clutched tightly, cameras rolling. Their voices carried over the commotion, eager for any detail. "What can you tell us about the heroic canine officer?" One shouted toward Jordan. "How did he bring down the suspect?" Jordan let out a breath, rising to his feet. Thor did what he was trained to do. He answered simply. He kept people safe. The cameras flashed, capturing the moment. But Thor, unaffected by the attention, simply sat beside his handler, his tongue peeking out as he looked up at Jordan. To him, this was just another day on the job. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the scene. The tension in the air slowly faded, replaced by the quiet hum of normalcy returning. Jordan gave Thor a final pat on the side. "Let's head home, partner." Thor wagged his tail, standing up and shaking off the dust from his fur. Together, they turned away from the flashing lights, the fading voices, and the lingering chaos.